Our featured story, we're once again talking about the war in Iran. Major development.
Tonight, it's been a while since I actually watched him live. I said, why not? Let's try to do it on a live stream. Let's see what happens. YouTube, if you try to shut me down, that means you're racist because I'm black. All right, let's go.
Major updates are happening. Our big story tonight, we're talking about Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, who gave a statement today outlining exactly the new approach and strategy against Iran. We talked about this a little bit last week and how the Trump administration is shifting away from military action to economic pressure. And the big question last week is, what exactly are we going to do to Iran that we haven't already done? We've already imposed a maximum pressure sanctions regime. We've already imposed a blockade over all their ports in the Persian Gulf. So the question is, what can we do that hasn't already been done? Last week, they said there would be secondary sanctions against countries that do business with Iran. We've seen none of that yet. No secondary sanctions, no confrontation with Iran's major trading partners. But today, we finally got some clarity on what the program is going to entail. Today, the Treasury Department announced that there is a list of 60 individuals and entities which will now be sanctioned. They also are increasing economic pressure on a few key industries in Iran, specifically things like gold, cryptocurrency, aviation, and other things. And it looks fine, I guess. The major question now is whether and to what extent the United States is going to confront China. I think everybody knows and everybody realizes that's kind of the missing link here. We're trying to collapse the Iranian regime without bombing them, so we're doing it economically. But Iran's most important economic partner is China. So any attempt to collapse the regime with economic pressure that does not involve pressure against China or does not even address China is probably not going to work at all. So unless and until we hear what the program is vis-a-vis Beijing, it's kind of hard to say this is going to have any impact at all. So we'll talk a little bit about that. We'll get into some of the details on the plan. We're also going to talk tonight about a Supreme Court ruling about a Trump administration executive order to crack down on mail-in ballots, so-called in-person absentee voting. And I suppose this is supposed to be a substitute for the SAVE Act.
The only thing I really care about is his, I'm curious to hear his take on the sanctions that Trump is proposing now on Iran. Probably won't get into that Supreme Court decision tonight. If it's interesting, I might do a reaction to that later on. Let's go.
Trump administration was trying to get legislation passed through budget reconciliation that at the federal level would try to address voter fraud or some kind of nationwide voter ID scheme. That didn't work. Senate Majority Leader John Thune is not even going to bring it to the floor for a vote. They won't even put it in there. They're not even going to try to pass it. And so now instead, the Trump administration has created this executive order, pretty ridiculous. The way it works is they're going to have Homeland Security create a list of every eligible voter in the country, and then they're going to use this list of voters to then go to...
Let me get that like. I want him to get to the Iran things first, but he might be going straight to the Supreme Court decision, so we'll see. Let's go.
...the post office and say that anybody that's not on the list cannot submit their ballot by mail, which is a pretty convoluted idea when you think about it. I don't know how that's supposed to work because the eligibility is changing all the time. People are dying all the time. People are moving all the time. And so how they're going to have an up-to-date current list of every voter and then have the post office then review that and determine whose ballots are going to be mailed and whose aren't. That doesn't even sound right. It doesn't even sound legal. And I think even if it was, it wouldn't even work. But this is what they're trying. And so, of course, a Democrat state, Massachusetts, challenged the executive order immediately. Federal judge declared the whole thing is shut down. There's a nationwide injunction. Elections in 2 months. The Supreme Court reviewed one of the challenges and said that it lacks standing, but basically they're going to have to adjudicate the actual substance of the executive order at some point, probably before the election. And I imagine that when that happens, it's going to get shut down. So we're going into 2026, just like in 2024, just like in 2022, with no real remedy about the increase in mail-in ballots, which is a major structural problem for Republicans. So we'll talk about that too. Another pretty big disappointment. But it's going to be a good show. Before we get into it, I want to remind you to smash the follow button on Rumble, smash the like button, leave a comment. Let me know what you think about the show. Check out our...
It's amazing how Nick is still into the Democrat-Republican paradigm. I kind of get it because that's like his thing. It's almost like being upset with Barry Sanders for always wanting to compare things to football. But dude, you have to know it's bigger than this whole DR thing now. It's different. It's a different level we're playing at. So it's interesting to see how he's holding on to that particular worldview of the D's versus the R's.
Our merch store at Fuentes.store. We have the brand new summer collection. If you want to support the show, subscribe at AmericaFirst.plus, $15 a month. You get access to the entire archive, every episode of the show, MP3 format, MP3 downloads, RSS feed. If you want to join the $100 a month club group chat, that's also at AmericaFirst.plus. I dropped in there today and, I really try to talk to the people of the group chat. I drop in there today and I'm like, what should I cover on the show tonight? There's nothing happening in the news. Nothing interesting is happening in the world. What should I cover? What would you like to hear about? And I get one guy, he's like, well, you should just cover whatever you feel like covering. I'm like, thanks. Thanks for telling me that. That's a great idea. Anybody else? Somebody says, the news is boring. I think a Fortnite stream would be more interesting than that. Great. Another valuable suggestion. Thanks for your input. Anybody else? It's like this is the level of discourse in the group chat. There's still some Thomas Massey supporters in there. Somebody says, Nick, if it wasn't for such and such a thing, Thomas Massey would be a great candidate for 2028. I'm like, yeah, I don't know. Tucker Carlson Network is down the hall to the left. You must be lost. So please, if there's anybody out there, at this point, it's more for me than it is for you. If there's anybody out...
I'm kind of glad Nick is seeing through the whole Thomas Massey, Tucker, psyop. Remember, Ted Cruz, wasn't Ted Cruz a Tea Party guy? And now look at Ted Cruz. They always seem to... What the establishment does is likes to siphon off certain of the more far right or far left politicians to get them ready for the next wave. Okay. And Thomas Massey seems like he's part of that new Ted Cruz. I think like Thomas Massey is the new Ted Cruz, if that makes sense to you guys.
Up there that has any real ideas. I'm reachable. I'm in the group chat. I'm there. I'm present. I'm engaged. I'm looking for fans of the show. $100 a month club, AmericaFirst.plus. If you want to suggest topics for the show, hang out, get the bonus content, it's all there. I was going to do some bonus content over the weekend, but there's like nothing going on. I don't know what happened, but it feels like ever since the war in Iran started, there's just like nothing. We had the war in Iran for a little while. We thought it was going to come back, and then it didn't. And so now it's like it's advanced. Politics, drought, content drought. The only thing that's going on is Richard Spencer's book. I didn't really want to get into it, and I'm not. Look, I like Richard. I do. I like Richard. I like Mark. I commend their effort. I don't want to get in a big fight with them about it. That's like the only thing that's been going on the timeline. Everything else, well, there is nothing else. So anyway, so that's
we need
the plug.
Ye back.
Fuentes.store, AmericaFirst.plus.
We need Ye. His shit's boring without Ye. Now Ye's doing his thing right now, but we need Ye back, man. Y'all boring, bro. I love y'all white people, but y'all some boring ass people. Y'all can't move the needle nowhere. Have y'all noticed? I hope y'all understand that. I hope that's the one thing you guys take from this whole situation right now is that y'all don't have no motion in the ocean. It take black people to get shit cracking around here. It's crazy that y'all don't see that.
It's going to be a good show, but like I said, there's really not a lot happening. The biggest thing that I saw over the weekend is that yet again, Hassan Piker is out there mocking the death of Charlie Kirk. And there's something almost like Shakespearean about this. There's something very interesting going on. And the timing actually really works out. And what I'm talking about is, and I've been saying this for a long time, I've been saying this since basically November, October of last year. On the one hand, you've got the Candace Owens, Andrew Wilson debate, moderated by Patrick Bet-David. And it's a huge spectacle. Candace Owens and Andrew Wilson going at it for 3 hours. Does a 30-06 leave an exit wound or does it not? Were these surveillance videos altered by AI or did they adjust the aspect ratio? Why did they pave over the grass just 6 days after a man's head was blown off in the middle of the campus? These are the questions that we need to be asking ourselves as conservatives and right-wing.
Thanks for jumping in, but I like my likes. Give me my likes, man. Not too many channels gonna do the stuff that I'm doing if y'all haven't noticed, bro. I reviewed the Montel Williams Holocaust denial episode a couple days ago. Live. Okay? I got 2 hate speech strikes already. I went from getting 11,000 views to 10. If you're in here, hit that like button for me, please. All 3 of you. Let's go.
So it's like, this is the spectacle that's going on the right wing. Tucker Carlson is doing his 10-point plan. Decency, unity, civility, hope, change. Let's all just be nice to each other. Let's all just eat the rich and let's not talk about the culture war or the race war. These are the conversations happening on the right. Psychic victims trying to exonerate that woman that killed her children. They're talking about nanobots. Now the new conspiracy is that the beef from Argentina was poisoned by Israel, and that's why Trump bought it. This is what's happening on the right wing. And then on the left, you've got Hassan Piker making fun of Charlie Kirk. You've got a drag show lip-syncing, dressed up like Charlie Kirk, making fun of him dying. You've got DSA candidates winning across the country saying we're going to impoverish the white middle class. We're going to abolish ICE. We're going to open the prisons, prosecute ICE, and then fill the jails with ICE agents after we let the criminals go. It's like that is what is happening on the left. And I've been saying it all year. I've been saying it especially lately. You're finally starting to see it. I sounded like I was out of step with everybody a year ago. I sounded like I was out of step with everybody when the year started. I think now people are coming around. Well, once again, as always, people are starting to see just 6-9 months after I did, people are starting to see.
I'm also a little confused, and we'll see how it shakes out on why Nick is so adamant about this Charlie Kirk assassination narrative that we were given by the feds. I don't know why he feels like even questioning that some kind of way hurts the right. I don't understand that. I don't understand that. You know, that Charlie Kirk assassination was just too convenient. It was too convenient, you know? So there's something up with it. And, you know, I know it sounds kind of, cliche right now, but we should be asking questions. And I wasn't even a big Charlie Kirk stan like that at all. I really didn't care for his delivery or whatnot. I think he spoke about the obvious. You know, a lot of these conservative, mainstream, right-wing guys talk about the obvious, transgender, Matt Walsh. Oh, a man's not a woman. No shit, Sherlock. A lot of these guys got their fame off of the obvious, and I think Charlie Kirk kind of fell into that category. All right, let's go.
See what is about to happen. And what I think is about to happen is that we are all in for a very rude awakening. Because what is happening, to put it succinctly, is that the left is reconstituting itself. The left was decimated after 2024 because of some very specific reasons. It was the nomination of Joe Biden, which was a terrible mistake. And obviously then he went to the debate, got pushed out. Kamala was appointed. She was a disaster. It was the schism in the left after October 7th, which pitted the Jewish money against the progressive DSA radical types that are the younger generation and the foot soldiers of the party. And it was the resurgence of Trumpism and MAGA. It was the overreach of the DOJ raiding Mar-a-Lago, charging him, shooting him, all of which...
I'm a one-of-one type dude, man. Hit that like button for me, please. I appreciate y'all coming in and hanging out with me this late evening. But hit that like button for a brother. Let's go. It's free as shit.
Backfired and made him more popular than ever. Year and a half ago, the left was decimated by these things. They were disunited, disorganized, disintegrated, decimated. They basically did not exist in any meaningful way. And in the past year and a half, they have learned from their mistakes. They've dispensed with the speech policing, the worst excesses of trannyism, the worst expressions of anti-whiteness. And they kind of found their footing. And now they've got this new program. They're calling it Woke 2.0. It's back to these material conditions that socialists fixate on, putting the cultural stuff on the back burner. And it's these people like Zohran Mamdani, Al Sayed, Hassan Piker, AOC. It's these less offensive expressions of radical leftism, talking to people about affordability, healthcare, inflation, grocery.
Isn't it insane how a guy like Hassan Piker has a voice in my country? Some Turk anchor baby, some kind of way has the ear of my people. How did that happen? PBD, this fucking Iranian implant con man, has the ear of my people. That shit bothers me, bro. It makes me jealous. I don't like that. It seems like every voice now is a foreigner, if y'all haven't noticed. Not real Americans.
Prices, childcare, etc. And I think by 2028, this is going to be a real force. And the problem is that while right-wingers are fighting each other over nonsense, and I'm not talking about Israel, that's a real issue, but fighting each other over the kookery and over the nonsense, the left is gathering steam and they're coming back for all of us with a real vengeance. And I think people are just not ready for this. And I put this out on Twitter today. You just think about these two things that are playing out. On the right wing, people like Marjorie Greene and Tucker Carlson are begging the left for unity. Literally begging them. That's what Tucker's 10-point plan was about. It was pandering with economic populism to the socialists by saying, hey, we can play that game too. We want to eat the rich. We want to raise taxes on financial speculation. We want to do something for affordability. We're the economic populists also. So it's pandering to socialists and the DSA. And then it's also pandering to this conspiratard sensibility, the Epstein class, going after the billionaires, going after the elites, the oligarchy, this sort of thing. And they're begging the left to unite against Israel, against Epstein, against the billionaires.
I'm going to tell you right now, if you ain't here watching this with me and you haven't hit that like button yet, I promise you, you don't have the courage to go to heaven. You do not have the courage to go to heaven. Okay? Because in order to go to heaven, you're going to have to be racist, anti-Semite, and a misogynist, and every other fucking word that the devil has put in front of us to keep us from the truth. You're going to have to be all those things. So if you don't have the courage just to hit that like button, your ass ain't going to heaven. I'm telling you. And that's not just me talking shit.
Marjorie Taylor Greene is going on The View. Please like me. I'm not the stupid hillbilly that you parody on Saturday Night Live. I'm actually really hip. I'm really with it. Look at me. I could talk about affordability too. You got people like Candace Owens. I think she's doing something similar. They're begging the left for mercy. They're begging the left to unite, begging the left to get apart, to be a part of the program. And then you look at what the left is doing, and everywhere and in every way, the left is shooting down all those overtures. And they're pretty clear about this. They want us dead. You know, how has this been received on the left? I'm not talking about Cenk Uygur. I'm not talking about Tulsi Gabbard. I'm not talking about Bill Maher. I'm talking about people like Hassan Piker, Zohran, Mehdi Hassan. How are they receiving these overtures from the right? Are they embracing us with open arms? No, they're literally celebrating the death of Charlie Kirk. We on the right are saying, please, please work with us. We want unity. We can do that too. We can be economic populists too. And the left is saying, yeah, we killed your top guy. Isn't that hilarious? We killed your top guy. Isn't that hilarious? Isn't that a joke? They want to kill the president. They want to kill everybody. They want to kill Elon. They want to kill Peter Thiel. And I'm not saying, listen, I have major disagreements with Elon and Thiel. They want to kill these people because they think they're like fascists. They want to kill these people because they think they're pro-white. They want to kill these people because they think they're right-wing. They think Elon is a white nationalist, and for that reason, they want to kill him. They think Trump is a white nationalist, and for that reason, they want to kill him. This is what the left is saying and doing. So I've been adamant about this. Look at what is playing out on social media. And the best way I can describe it, what we are watching, is that the right wing is blowing it. Specifically Trump. Trump is the leader of the right wing. Trump, whether we like it or not, it is a fact. Some people will characterize that as me saying, you know, I sold out, I switched sides. Listen, I've made it very clear. I'm off the Trump train. Trump has betrayed America First and MAGA and everything.
You know, there's a part of me that says that Trump is the last Gentile king, if that makes sense to y'all watching. The fullness of the Gentiles has reached its peak, and Trump showed you that it's a wrap, guys. He didn't have the fortitude, he didn't have the courage, he didn't have that God spirit, that Christ spirit in him to get the shit done. And I don't necessarily mean with the hammer, you know. I mean more with the just righteousness, man, by doing the right thing for the people of this country. He's not doing it. He sold out, bro. He touched that wall. Charlie Kirk touched that wall. Never forget that. They touched the fucking wall. And y'all know what I mean by that.
Like it or not, it is a matter of fact that Trump is the institutional figurehead of the Republican Party. As the president, he's the formal leader of the GOP, the official leader of the GOP. He is, as a matter of fact, the center of gravity and center of mass of all right-wing organizing, fundraising, electioneering, everything. Trump is blowing it, and he is the ship. He's the vessel. If he goes down, everybody goes down. The people that like him, the people that don't like him, the people that support him, the people that don't support him. Everybody that is against the left or defines themselves in opposition to the left, which would be defined as diversity, feminism, socialism, wokeism, anybody that's against that is going down with Trump. He's blowing it. He's destroying the brand. He is quickly losing steam and popularity, and we're all going down with him. He's blowing it for all of us. And you know this, one, because of the numbers, favorability rating, job approval, the midterm elections that are coming up, the generic ballot polling, how Republicans are going to get wiped out. But you also just see it in the zeitgeist. You see how 2 years ago, all the podcast bros were pro-Trump. And I remember, because I was there, it was the Theo Vons, the Joe Rogans, the Tim Dillons. And none of them are right-wing, by the way. Tim Dillon is not a white nationalist. I wouldn't even say he's right-wing. I wouldn't even say he's conservative. I like him. I agree with him on a lot of things. I don't think he's a conservative. And neither is Joe Rogan, and neither is Theo Von. These guys are like cultural libertarians. You could say there's something like socially liberal, fiscally conservative, some variation of that. They're anti-war. They want taxes to be cut. They don't want totalitarian speech policing, but they also want to smoke pot and own guns and things like that. year and a half ago, all those guys to a man were pro-Trump, and you were faggot if you weren't. All those guys were pro-Trump. That like Austin comedy scene, they were all pro-Trump. The podcast bros, the comedians, the right wing was mostly unified pro-Trump. And it was like embarrassing to be a Democrat. That's all flipped now. It is all flipped. And now all the energy is with the Zorons, the AOCs, the Al-Sayeds. And it is seen that the Democrats have the anti-AIPAC energy, and the Trump Republicans are the Epstein class. The Trump Republicans are the Zionist-controlled right. The Trump Republicans are the Wall Street billionaire oligarchy. The Republicans are the Silicon Valley, little tech, PayPal mafia. They're the party of flock cameras. They're the party of Raytheon. They're the party of Palantir. They're the party of Epstein Island, right? And the Democrats are against AIPAC, and the Democrats are in favor of affordability and things like that. To me, this is the general sentiment. And so right-wing politics is really being deprived of oxygen for this reason. People have lost interest. They've lost enthusiasm. They're not engaged. They don't support it. And as such, the more enthusiastic, fanatical, activated members of the Democrat caucus, the Democrat coalition.
And see, this is my assessment on the whole situation. This is how you know that the system purposely allowed these weirdos to openly criticize Israel after October 7th. This is where the young Turks got their steam again. Okay? The Tim Dillons of the world. Everyone that was calling Ye and Nick Fuentes an anti-Semite was able to be anti-Semites. Okay? Because the cool thing at that time was to be called an anti-Semite during Ye 24. Never forget that. But after October 7th, they opened up the floodgates with the whole Palestinian bombing and killing the innocent children. You go back and look, you'll see videos of Anna Kasparian calling Ye an anti-Semite. And then you fast forward a year later, now she's being called an anti-Semite and saying, I'm not an anti-Semite. That was the plan. They made talking about Israel lame. They let the lamest, weakest, softest, Satanist type motherfuckers you can ever think about on the left. They gave them a reason to talk shit about Israel, and it made it a lame topic. People are even tired of talking about it now. Dan Bazarian, he falls into that category. Myron Gaines, who the fuck is this guy? He's a Somalian coming over here talking shit. He's talking about Israel. They made it lame. And that was on purpose.
They're the ones that are the force now. That's my feeling. And I think that it is only going to increase this way into 2028. I think the Democrats are going to gather steam. And I think it's going to be a really tough uphill battle in 2028. This is just my general feeling. And I think that the only way for us to respond to this is to understand what we're about. We're a faction of the right wing, okay? The left is still the enemy. The left is still evil. We are still not, because understand, to be a part of the left, you have to embrace feminism. We never can. You have to embrace diversity. We never can. You have to embrace things like BLM and open borders. You have to embrace all that kind of stuff, socialism, bio-Leninism. You have to embrace all that garbage. We never, so we're not left wing. We're also not part of the Israel-controlled Zionist axis in the international center right that spans through America, Brazil, El Salvador, Hungary, all these other countries. We are a faction within the right. We're the nationalist faction. We recognize that we have to be pro-white, in favor of American heritage, against immigration. We also have to be against foreign influence coming from Israel, coming from the Jewish oligarchy. And I think that we're going to go through a pretty bad winter on the right wing, but this may be a good thing. It's going to be a culling, I think, that is going to basically flush out the weakest members of the right. And so I feel like a lot of these neocon types, a lot of these establishment types, some of the people that have come onto the scene over the past couple of years for one reason or another, I think these people are going to lose interest, go away. They're not going to be prepared for the hard times ahead. And I think this is a real opportunity.
See, I think Nick is also missing he's not seeing that the whole white thing is dead. It's over. This white America ideal you have, it's over with. You know? The ideas are not coming from white people. If you haven't noticed, Nick, the ideals and the ideas are not coming from white people. And I love white people. I love all people, but they're not coming from that. They're not. They're not. The newness, the freshness, the swag, the likability, the popularity, the emotion, the spirit, it's not coming from white people. And it won't come from white people. That's not to, and I'm not dissing white people. I'm just telling y'all real. It's going to come from, quote unquote, those y'all call black Americans. And you'll see. Black Americans is going to save the world. You watch. And that hurts people's feelings, but it just is what it is.
Just like us, we're getting in at the ground floor here. Okay? That this is the bottom of the bear market. We're headed to that. We're headed to the lowest valley of the bear market. And I think this is when nationalists really need to buy in. And this is why I've really been pushing for the past few weeks. The young people got to go out there, get involved. Yes, get involved in the Trump administration right now. Get involved in a campaign for 26. Get involved in young Republicans, college Republicans. And we're going to be making a big push through 28, even and actually especially if Republicans lose in 28. Because even and especially if Republicans lose, that's the opportunity. When everybody else goes out, that's when we go in. And then, because politics is cyclical, when another wave begins to form, maybe not in 28, but in 32 or 36, who is going to be there in those institutions, who will have been there, laying the foundations brick by brick, making those alliances and building those relationships, it's going to be us. And I know it's not a great forecast. People want to hear like, oh, the revolution's come. What do we do now? Someone needs to just fucking do something and run for office. No, it's just timing is everything, okay? And clearly the timing's not with us right now. So anyway, those are just some of my thoughts on there's not a lot happening in the news, but I think this is really why. We have to collectively now regard Trumpism as a complete and total failure that will leave no lasting mark on government. And if anything, it's bad. This movement's been going on since 2015, 11 years. There's not a single piece of landmark legislation. The Supreme Court has not been made nationalist. There's no institutional change in the federal bureaucracy other than the elimination of USAID, which is pretty minor. And most of its activities were reorganized into different parts of the State Department.
I got to give him credit on that. I mean, he's right. It's been so underwhelming. Everyone thought Trump was going to come in and be like, let's make this world a better place. And he has totally been a lame duck. It's been so sad. It's been so sad and good at the same time. It has to be this way, if y'all understand what I mean. It has to. It has to be this way.
11 years has come and gone. No.
Or to never get better.
Border wall, no institutional changes to the immigration scheme, no institutional changes to the tariff regime, no tariff schedule. We're still in the Middle East. As a matter of fact, the only thing pushing us out is Iran by force against the Trump administration. And so Trumpism is come and gone. We're headed into 2026. We're going to get routed in the midterms. Democrats are going to own the House. They're already preparing the list of targets for their investigations and subpoenas. They're going to grind the administration to a halt. The primary for president in 28 will quickly begin. The vice president and perhaps other members of the cabinet will be involved in
Coming
that.
in, please hit that
At
like
the
button for me.
earliest, in the
I
middle
really
of
appreciate
next
it. Not too
year,
many people are gonna
and then it's off to the races. You
do
know, then
things like
Trump
this
is
on their
basically
channel.
a
So
lame duck
please
president
give me that.
already.
Thank you.
And the progress that we've made, that's about as far as it's going to go, which is pretty sad. So Trumpism has ended not with a bang, but with a whimper. You thought it was going to end with some kind of climax, one way or the other. We win in some kind of epic battle, or we lose and all go to prison. No, he got shot. He won and came back. He freed the people that were in prison. And we did all this so that we could cut the corporate tax rate permanently. Right? I mean, that in the end, that's really the big legislation from budget reconciliation, is we made the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act from 2017 permanent. And that's it. And now we hurtle towards 2026. No major legislation on border, no wall, no mass deportations, no tariff schedule, no.
You know, just thinking about it, what I've noticed too, and just even listening to Nick right now and the American people in general, one thing that no one's really fighting for or bringing up is manufacturing. It's like that has just been lost in all of the conversation. It's all about immigration, taxes, all these fringe things, these things that are just paperwork. We don't have any true manufacturing in this country. And that's a problem. That's a major problem. We don't build anything anymore. See, one thing about World War II that was so, I guess, good, or something that helped this country, is that there was still manufacturing going on in America. So they can turn a switch and, you know, if a company was making widgets, now they can help make tanks. We don't have that anymore. All that's been gutted and moved into China's sphere of influence. And that was on purpose. America has been sold. So,
no charter cities, no colony on the moon or Mars, nothing. No Greenland, no Canada, no nothing. That's it. So we have to start thinking ahead. This grand cycle, this super cycle is now coming to an end, okay? The wave is cresting. There's going to be some finality. There's going to be a reprieve. And then, you know, maybe if we're lucky, there'll be something else in the future. That's sort of where we are. It's not a great feeling, but that's where we have to be realistic. That's where we are. Okay, so that's that. I do want to move on. I want to get into our news for the night. And to that end, I mean, what are the big news stories? We're just getting our asses kicked. Our featured story tonight, we're talking about the war in Iran, which is still ongoing. We're at day, 167, is it? There's that number again. 178. We're at day 178. And in 2 days, it will have been fully 6 months. 6 months of war with Iran. Trump has been in office for 18 months, about I think it's 18, 19 months since January 2025. And 6 out of those, fully a third of the Trump administration so far, we have been consumed by this unsuccessful war with Iran. And the latest in the war is that we got a statement from our Treasury Secretary about how the war is going to be fought. We gave up on the war. Okay, the war is over. We're not bombing Iran anymore because we can't. We lost the military exchange. We cannot militarily defeat Iran. And even trying to defeat Iran militarily is going to backfire so badly, it would make us lose. And one of the announcements that came out today, it's from a retired general, I believe. He said that all 15 of our bases in the Persian Gulf region probably are going to be abandoned when all is said and done. We covered this last week. There was a piece in the Washington Post. The Pentagon...
It's weird how we talk about this Iran conflict, left or right, however you feel about it, as if we needed to even do this in the first place. It was such unnecessary. It's so unnecessary. It's just like fighting a war for the sake of fighting a war. You know? It's real street mentality if you think about it. People talk about how blacks are in the streets and this, that, and the other. Well, this country's ran like a street gang, if you ask me.
Is seriously considering that 15 of our bases in the Persian Gulf we're not even going to rebuild. The 15 bases that have been either completely destroyed or severely damaged, we're not even going to go back in and repair them, bring them back online, because it wouldn't be worth it. To bring them back would just be creating more targets for a future confrontation with Iran when they'll inevitably be destroyed again by Iranian drones and missiles. So we can't achieve our objectives, and even if we continued fighting, knowing we couldn't achieve our objectives to create some kind of low-level pressure with a limited campaign, it would backfire so badly we would actually just lose personnel and supplies. So the new approach, which we talked about last week, is that the administration is pivoting to this maximalist economic pressure. And so they're saying we went from epic fury, bombing them 15,000 times, to now it's economic fury. And they've got a new name for it. I believe it's called Outcast. And now the new program is that we are going to totally quarantine and blockade Iran's economy. And what we're going to do is, one, there is the U.S. Navy imposed blockade in the Persian Gulf. So all of Iran's ports in the Persian Gulf, we have effectively closed by attacking any Iranian-linked shipping that goes through the Strait of Hormuz. That's one thing that we're doing. The other thing is the existing sanctions regime. So we've imposed sanctions on Iran's major industries, on their government personnel, and that's been in place since 2018. Now they're saying that we're escalating this effort with this new approach. They said this last week. They said that we're going to have an economic D-Day. We're going to put so much pressure on Iran's economy, it's going to resemble the D-Day invasion in Normandy. And people said, well, what really can you do? What more can be done to Iran's economy that hasn't already been done? We have the blockade in place. We have a maximum pressure sanctions regime that's almost a decade old. What more realistically is even possible to do that we haven't already done? And so this was announced last week. They had no specifics. The big development today is that the Treasury Secretary made a statement and announced some of the details of what the economic warfare would look like. And this is the statement from Washington Post, or pardon me, is from Wall Street Journal. It says, quote, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said the U.S. is launching a new campaign to isolate the Iranian regime, warning the countries and companies that do business with Tehran will face the wrath of the Trump administration. As part of the new effort, which he called Operation Economic Outcast.
I'm curious to know what the American people think about this, those who are paying attention. I think a lot of people have just checked out of the day-to-day politics. Like Nick was saying earlier, it's boring. It seems to be purposefully stagnant and just a minutia. Trump will tweet something here and there, but nothing's really happening. But I wonder how people feel about this particular new phase of the conflict with this economic sanction proposal that Trump's been talking about.
Bessent said his department has mapped every node, every facilitator, and every network that Iran has used to smuggle oil and evade sanctions. He said the U.S. was sanctioning more than 60 entities, individuals, and vessels across the world that enable the regime to procure nuclear and missile technology, earn revenue from oil, and carry out cyber operations. Bessent didn't outline any specific steps the U.S. would take against individual countries, including China, a major buyer of Iran's oil, which is to put it mildly. He said the U.S. privately defined timelines for countries to comply, but then told reporters, I'm not actually going to set timelines, but we don't have infinite patience here. After the press conference, the Treasury Department announced that secondary sanctions could apply to countries and entities that do business in 5 sectors: digital assets, technology, gold, aviation, and shipping. Last week, Bessent said the aim of the new policy would be to create the conditions for regime collapse. Notably, Bessent didn't mention China, the regime's top trading partner, in his opening remarks about countries being targeted by the Treasury Department. So here's the thing about all of this. Like we've been talking about, The Trump administration is in a jam because we have to very carefully calibrate our approach to satisfy a few different constraints. So what our objective is, what we would like to see ideally, is that there would be a new regime in Iran, that the new regime would abandon their ambitions for a nuclear weapon, that they would comply with restrictions on their ballistic missile program, and that they might integrate into the region by normalizing ties with the Gulf countries and with Israel. That's the ideal scenario. Here's the problem, however. Let's say we want to achieve regime change. Well, that is the goal, and that has been the goal. The problem is we can't achieve regime change with military means alone, because as it stands, the only thing that we're willing to do is use our Air Force and our Navy to strike Iran from a safe distance. And that's not enough in a vast, huge, a country with a massive population like Iran with a 1 million-man army. You can't bomb them into submission. You can't displace the regime with just those means. In order to topple the regime, you need to go in and invade on the ground. So that's out. We can't achieve regime change that way. Okay, well, another way that we could topple the regime, and this would be relatively easy, theoretically, we could topple the regime with just air and sea power, but to do this, we would have to destroy their economy completely. And we could do that. I mean, theoretically, we could absolutely decimate their economy by bombing all their oil infrastructure. We could bomb Karg Island and destroy their ability to export oil. We could bomb their oil and gas fields and destroy all the infrastructure that allows them to extract and refine oil and gas. And doing that would cripple the government. They would have no revenue for the foreseeable future. They wouldn't be able to pay the police or the military. Economy would collapse, and eventually the regime would fall. Here's the problem with that. One, you destroy Iran's ability to make money, and that's not just a problem for this regime, but it's a problem for any future regime.
All right. I think Nick is going to go with more of the same. I just don't see anything new coming out of what he's saying here. It's just that typical standard. If that happens, then this, and it just is nothing here. His posture needs to be more of fuck all this. You know, this whole idea of bombing people, and I'm not saying Nick's for it. You know, he's been anti-war pretty much, no new war type of guy. But I just don't like seeing him getting bogged down into this whole debate as if we need to be doing this in the first place. Like, how do we even get here? You know, and this whole idea of crippling people and crippling economies and crippling infrastructure, and it's old, guys. It's old. This shit doesn't work. You've been doing this since 1492. It's over. Okay? It's over. So we're going to let it go. We'll see how Nick progresses throughout, you know, the rest of the year and see how things shake out for him. You know, my ambition for Nick, I would say, would be that when the time comes for him to make the right decision, and I'm not saying he's made any quote unquote wrong decisions, but just when that moment of truth comes, it would be nice to see him pick the side of truth. I'm sure he will. I would be surprised if he doesn't. And we'll see how many people still stick with him. His so-called Groyper family sticks with him when he's faced with that decision. Okay, because it's gonna come. He's gonna have to choose between this whole white nationalist type of mentality and the truth. Because black and white nationalism is fake. It doesn't exist. It was created by the same people that you consider your enemy. All right. So with that being said, I'm gonna get out of here. He's still going on with the going. I might let it play a little bit longer. I'm gonna get off camera. I'm gonna let it play, and then if it gets interesting, I might chime in. If not, I'm gonna stay off camera and then just end the video. All right, here we go.
What's the issue there? Well, maybe we topple Iran's regime. Maybe destroying their economy brings about the overthrow of the government, but then eventually we're going to want a new government to stabilize control over this territory. The government will collapse. the Islamic regime will fall. But then the country descends into chaos, and we're going to need a new regime that will step up and then at some point be able to exert control over all the territory and all the people. But to do that, they're going to need to be able to pay police and the military. And to do that, they need the oil and gas revenue. They won't be able to have it because the infrastructure will take decades to repair. So Iran becomes a failed state, and 90 million people now have an uncertain destiny. You have a border crisis, refugee crisis. Maybe this creates militant groups, terrorists that then go overseas looking for vengeance against the United States or the Gulf countries. Maybe it destabilizes Shiite majority provinces or countries in the Middle East. That's a big problem. Number two, Iran retaliates and they blow up all the energy infrastructure in the Gulf. So that's another reason why that's out. So, this is the mindset of calibrating what we're going to do based on the constraints. We can't do anything more militarily. There's some things we could do, but the knock-on effects or second-order effects are too chaotic. So we need to have some kind of concessions. We need to extract some kind of compliance from the regime. We have to hurt them, but not too badly. We have to hurt them enough so that they actually are willing to negotiate. And this has been the process basically since February, is how do we calibrate exactly the right amount of pressure that it gets us results? The Iranian regime fears us. They buckle under the pressure, so they're willing to give us concessions, but it's not so much pressure that Iran retaliates in a way that's devastating to America and its allies, or the regime completely collapses and turns into a failed state. And so this is what they came up with. They said, well, we're going to stop all the kinetic strikes on Iran, the actual bombing. The bombing is increasingly becoming more costly for us than it is for them, because as we've talked about, we're burning through offensive and defensive weapons. Our bases are being destroyed. We can't protect our allies anymore. So now they pivoted to this economic war. Problem is, we're already doing economic war. We've been doing economic war for 10 years. So people say, what more can you do? Have the sanctions regime in place. You've imposed the blockade over all of their ports. They closed the strait. We're closing it to their associated shipping. So people now say, what more can we add to this to tighten the screws against Iran? And what they came up with is they're going to have secondary sanctions. What are secondary sanctions? Iran still has other trading partners. They rely on about 4 or 5 other major countries to buy and sell to, or to launder their products and currency to the world. And those countries are the UAE, Iraq, Turkey, China. Those are the big ones. And sometimes there's others, but those are really the major countries. Like I said, it's maybe 4, 5, 6. But the big 4 are the UAE, Iraq, Turkey, and China. So if you really want to go after Iran, if you don't want to bomb Karg Island, if you don't want to keep bombing Iran, if the existing sanctions regime isn't producing compliance, what do? You go after those other countries they do business with. And where are we with this? Well, in the first place, last week, after the Treasury Department announced this new economic D-Day campaign, the UAE cut off all economic ties with Iran. And this is a big deal because even though the UAE is allied with Israel, and even though they've been the most aggressive against Iran, arguably out of the Gulf countries, they still had a very important economic relationship with Iran. And Iran, or rather the UAE, was how Iran was able to do trade with the world. They did a lot of their banking in the UAE, a lot of the financial transactions went through the UAE. And so after Iran attacked some shipping in the UAE's territorial waters and under pressure from the United States, it was said that Trump had a call with MBZ, the head of the UAE. The UAE did an official embargo of Iran, cut off all trade relations. So then that leaves Turkey, Iraq, China. Now, the Trump administration has not said what the secondary sanctions would be. And what that would look like is if China, Turkey, and Iraq don't stop doing business with Iran, then we're going to put sanctions on those countries. We've already exhausted sanctions against Iran. We've really done everything we can. So now we're going to move on to the next rung on the ladder. That's why they're secondary. We're going to then put sanctions on their trading partners. But that's the thing. They haven't really said what those secondary sanctions would be and when they're going to happen and which countries are going to be affected. And so last week, they didn't really say that. This week, they haven't.
You know what's interesting as Nick rattles off all these names of countries and whatnot is that if something was to happen in America tomorrow morning, let's say something happened, cyber attack. Let's go with the cyber attack approach, where a power grid is lost in a major U.S. city or a couple major U.S. cities. Who did it? Who did it? You know, there's so many interests that they're throwing at us to complicate this situation where if something happens, it's going to be a real life whodunit. All right. Now, Israel's in a tough position because if they do want to pull something like that off, the default is going to be Israel did it. All right. Even with the Charlie Kirk thing, you can see that that's a part of people's minds is that maybe Israel had something to do with it. Okay. So if something does happen like that, it's going to come with a big brand on it that says this cyber attack has been sponsored by Iran. You know what I mean? It's going to be, they're going to make it so obvious that this other country did it if and when it happens. All right. But this is just a messy game, you know, and then the idea of allies. I might do a video on this. This idea of allies and enemies, you know, when are we going to progress past the point where everyone's an ally? We're all here together. We're all here in this moment of time together. And I'm not trying to sound like a hippie. I'm trying to sound like a person who wants us to live. This is trash, man. I don't see any wisdom coming from anybody on TV these days. Even Nick Fuentes, who I like. He doesn't have wisdom, though. None of them. Anybody you pick, and I'm not just picking on Nick Fuentes. And Nick Fuentes is the best of the political commentators, in my opinion. And even he lacks wisdom. Everyone is in a race to die last instead of live first, if you haven't noticed. It shouldn't be America first. It should be live first. There should be no enemies. We should all be allies. Ye made a good point on Joe Rogan's podcast. When he went on Joe Rogan, he said, as a civilization, our goal should be to try to outdo other civilizations. To say we can outdo the Romans. We can outdo the Egyptian Empire. We can outdo the Babylonians. Like, we should make it based on that type of mentality where they look back and say, did y'all see how they did it? Let's do better than the next, civilization. But this ways of war and death and manipulation and greed, it's over. I'm over it. And a lot of people are over it. They're over it. All right. So I'm going to let it go, man. I appreciate y'all, those who did stop by, those who had the courage to hit that like button. And I do want to say this too. I'm not against any people, right? But I think this particular situation that we have in the world, especially as it pertains to America, because America is the light of the world. America is that promised land. America is the land of milk and honey. I'm not a fan of having these foreign influences over the promised land like that. I think they should be quiet and act like strangers and act like guests, not like they run the place. So that's why I have a problem with foreign people like PBD speaking and having such a large influence. Myron Gaines, Chink Uger, Hassan Piker, all these foreigners. It's already confusing it's too confusing the way it is right now. Be quiet. You're a guest. You're a stranger. Okay? You should be quiet and let us figure it out. I couldn't imagine me going to one of your countries and my son, now he's the most influential guy over there running your shit. That wouldn't seem right to you all. So I don't know why it's accepted here like that. So we should be tuning these people out. So with that being said, like I always say, I love y'all, man. Make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe. And I'll see you next time. I'm out.